mean, today with me, I've got Dave Lodge, who has written a biography on the 60s pop star Tommy Bruce. Dave was a good friend of Tommy's, and I believe his personal manager as well. And we're going to chat about the book, which I will turn over to Dave now. And Dave, what's the title of the book?
The book's called Have Gravel Will Travel, and it was Tommy who chose the title, really, because we had discussed on many long hours of driving together. He talked to me about his life, and I said, there should be a book about this, Tom, you know. And he said, well, I don't know, Davey, but if there was, we'd have to call it Have Gravel Will Travel. So I said, well, why was that, Tom? So he said, well, the thing is, you and I both liked a Western series on television that was on in the 60s called Have Gun Will Travel, about a guy called Paladin who traveled from place to place with his gun, wherever people wanted him. He said, well, I'm a man with a gravel in my voice and I'll travel anywhere to sing. So that's how the title came about. But at that point, I didn't think that I would write the book or know that the book would ever be written. Sadly, in 2005, the cancer which Tommy had suffered with 12 years previously came back, and it became apparent that I might lose my good friend, my brother in all but name, as we referred to each other. And so I thought, I'm going to have to try and write a book. This is a nightmare because I've never written a book before. And also, if Tommy were to die, which sadly he did, but fortunately after the book was published, I would then find myself, you know, having no reason to publish it. So anyway, I managed to do it, but we discussed it all. He did write his own foreword for the book, saying, you know, how much he appreciated what I thought and how I must have listened to him all the time. And I got it out, but we left out a lot of things, a lot of memories, and a lot of photographs that could be used, because Tommy had a vast selection of photographs, obviously, of his career and the people that he'd worked with. So anyway, I thought, you know, that was 2006. This is now, I'm getting very old, approaching 80. If I don't do something now to bring the whole book as I would have wanted it to be in the first place. So here we are. I've done it. It's in hardback. There's 40,000 more words. There's a wealth of photographs. And, you know, I just hope I've done Tommy justice, because it's all about Tom. Because anything I've achieved, other books that I've written since, have all been because Tommy gave me the confidence to go forward and try and do things.
Real labour of love for you then as well, Dave, hasn't it? As well as
and I have to admit, I shed quite a few tears with the memories when I was writing it, and then when I proofread it, I read a few more, and then when I got a copy of the book, which you might like to see, I read it again, and more tears.
And I'm assuming they're tears of joy as well, because from what I gather, Tommy was a really lovely bloke as well, yeah?
A fabulous man, a fabulous man. People don't realise how talented he was, what a down-to-earth human being he was. And human being is a good description of him. He remained the boy off the barrows on Covent Garden markets all through his life, right at the end. We'd go down to Camden Town, to Castle's Pie and Mash shop, every week before we set off for a gig on a Friday, perhaps. And everybody would know him. The people in Camden Town, where he was born, and it'd be, hi, Tom. Okay, yeah, everything's marvellous. Hello, darling, how are you? You know, we'd go into Castles itself, and they knew what we had, double pie and mash with green liquor. He was that man. He wasn't, oh, well, I might be, or I might have been a star. He was just Tommy Bruce, you know. And that goes back, of course, to Norrie Paramor, when he said to Tommy, you know, well, okay, I'm going to sort of record you and put this song out, Ain't Misbehavin'. He said, what we need for you now is a name. And Tommy looked at him, and in his Cockney accent, which I can't do, but he said, "What's wrong with Tommy Bruce?" And Norrie looked at this middleweight boxing champion from the army, because he'd done his national service and boxed while he was in. And he said, "Okay then, Tommy Bruce it is." So,
he didn't have a very easy upbringing, did he? Because wasn't he orphaned?
He was, and in very tragic circumstances, all due to a family member. I mean, Tommy's dad was what they called a dust inspector and worked on the local council tips. And what a dust inspector was someone who selected goods that could be actually sold on, resold, if they were fit for use, you see. So that was his job, apart from having been also a trainer and masseur in a local gym. Anyway, the thing was that the lady he was married to, Tommy's mum, she had a brother, Bill, who worked on the docks. And he decided that he and his son would avail themselves of a couple of cases of tea, and the ideal place to hide them would be in the loft of his sister's house. So this story was never ever told until the book was written, and it was wonderful that Tommy said that I could tell it, sort of thing, while he was still alive. So they carried the tea, but what they didn't know was that the corner of one of the cases of tea had a hole in it. So the tea was drifting out and falling along the road, giving a trail straight to Tommy Bruce's mum and dad's house. So, of course, the police had no trouble in following, finding, and duly arrested Uncle Bill and his son, who Tommy thought was also called Bill. That was his cousin, of course. But they also arrested Tommy's mum. They tried to involve Tommy's dad and arrest him as well, but he was able to prove that he was at work. Anyway, duly went to court, and Bill, his son, and sadly Tommy's mum were sent to prison.
Oh my goodness.
During the course of which she became extremely ill, had to have a hysterectomy, hemorrhaged, cutting a long story short, and died. So then Tommy's dad just went completely to pieces, and it didn't live very long after his wife had died, which of course meant they were orphaned. And the thing was that Tommy never told anybody this, and when he got into show business, he was someone who they wanted him to be on This Is Your Life, you see, but he turned it down because he couldn't tell. He thought it would shame the whole family what had happened, you see, so he couldn't tell the story. So anyway, his story to everybody was, who asked about his mum and dad, oh well, it was the war, boom, house gone, mum and dad gone, end of story, you see, and that was as much as he'd ever say. So he was in the Middlesex orphanage. His dad had taught him how to box, and he soon displayed that talent with one of the tough boys, who happened to be called Peter Shilton, but no relation to the would then be England goalkeeper, who thought he could, but after Tommy had knocked him down a couple of times. And anyway, one of the masters said, somebody taught you to box, haven't they? So he said, yeah, my dad, so. And then in later time, Mr. Sims, who was that master, he brought a group of boys from the orphanage to see Tommy perform in a theatre. And he said, here you are, boys. Tommy's an example for you, that just because you grow up in an orphanage doesn't mean you can't achieve. So, that was a big deal for Tommy. Not quite such a big deal was when he went back to visit the orphanage a couple of years later, and there was a security guard on the gate, and he said, you can't come in here. So he said, well, I want to see the boys. I brought presents for the boys, and I see the masters. I used to live here, He said, that may well be the case, he said, but it's a prison now, so if I let you in, I won't be able to let you out. So that's the story of Tommy's orphanage, briefly.
Did you always have aspirations to be an actor or a singer, or?
No, it was down to a guy called Barry Mason. And Barry, of course, went on to write songs with Les Reed, amongst other people, but specifically with Les Reed, you know. And Barry was living there with his then girlfriend, Pat, and she became his first wife. And Tommy had rented the ground floor of the house, you see. And he used to see Tommy cleaning his car and generally doing things. And he said to him one day, he said, "You know, you're a good-looking boy, Tommy." He says, "Have you ever thought of being a pop singer?" So Tommy said, "Well, not really, you know. I haven't." He said, "Well, funny enough, I'm in the music industry. I sing in local London clubs with the Tony Ross Trio." He said, "And I'm going to be making a record soon. Would you like to come and see and hear what we do, you know?" So Julie went along, and at the end of the session, Barry did what he'd always intended to do, because I spoke to Barry on quite a few occasions in later times. And he said, "Do you want to try and sing a song, Tom?" So Tom said, "I don't know any songs, you know." So he said, "You must know something." He said, "Okay." He says, I know," he said, "Ain't Misbehavin', because Johnny Ray, who I really, you know, I'm a real fan of Johnny Ray, sang that." He said, "And I've got the record." He said, and I like Anthony Newley, and he's just had a hit with a song called Why. So, you know, one of those. So Barry said to Tony Ross, "Okay, play for Tommy, you know." So Tony said, he was a piano player, by the way, Tony, his trio, but he actually played piano. And he said, "What key are you singing, Tom?" And of course, he gave the usual joker reply, "Key, only key I know anything about is a Yale, you see." So Tony said, "Okay, I'll start playing and you follow me." And we started off. He played Ain't Misbehavin', and Tommy sang it. And then they also made an acetate of Why. It was on the same acetate. You know, this was what they had left, and this is what they would use, you see. So anyway, there's a guy called Ronnie Barrell, who was a very famous session drummer, and went on, sadly, not long before he died, he was with Frank Skinner in the Skinnerettes. That was Ronnie on drums on television then. So Ronnie said, "Man, you look like a boxer." And he wrote on the acetate where Barry had already written Tommy Bruce, before that, Barry Mason and Tony Ross Trio. And he said, "Oh, well, if you have a band, it's got to be the Bruisers, you see." So that's what he wrote on the acetate. And Ronnie Barrell being a bit of a card, you know. So anyway, of course, Tommy went back to work, forgot all about it. Nice day out sort of thing, but that was it. Of course, Barry goes up to see Norrie, and Norrie says, "Well, sorry, Barry, you know, but your voice is not what we're looking for." Well, they'd left the acetate playing because it just went from one track to another. And then he was hearing Tommy singing Ain't Misbehavin'. He said, so Norrie said, "Well, this could be something." He said, "Who is this?" So he said, "Oh, it's a friend of mine, Tommy Bruce." He said, "Really?" He said, "I think we could do something with this." He said, "It's very different, very new. There's nothing like it," which of course was a contradiction in what people would say in the future, that Tommy was copying people. But anyway, so the point is, he said, "Is he a good-looking boy?" So Barry said, "Oh yeah, he's got it all. He's good-looking, you know, good physique, everything about him, you know, he's a real looks the business sort of thing." So to bring him in to see me, so he goes in to see Norrie, and he said, "Right, I've listened to this, and I think we can do something." He said, "I'm going to put a rock cha-cha arrangement to it. We'll sort of set it up, and you'll do it." And Tommy said, "Oh, right, okay." He said, "We'll give you a contract, and we'll sign you for £15,000. So Tommy, 1959 going into 60, £15,000. You know, he's lucky if he earned £1,000 a year on the market, you know. And £15,000, you know. So, okay, great. You see, so you know, you'll have to open a bank account. We'll pay it into your bank account. You see. So okay, so again, Tommy goes away and he doesn't think much about it until one day the press are suddenly all over Covent Garden Market. He doesn't know what's going on, and they're looking for Tommy Bruce, you see, and all the photographers. And of course, once this all starts, the other barra boys and all the stall holders and everything are shouting out things like, "Oh, ain't she a lovely girl, you know? Look at her having a photograph taken," clearly taking the mickey out of him, but not meaning any harm by taking, you know, it was just good-natured banter.
Mm.
And actually, there are a lot of misconceptions now. Had another chart been chosen as the chart of choice for British music, in 2 charts out of 3, Tommy Bruce was number 1, but in the others, he was number 3.
Mm.
So in the other, it was number 3, and that was the one that eventually became the chart of choice. So although he did have a number 1 record, in the record book now it shows it was number 3.
Number 3, yeah.
Number 3. However, he still didn't know what was going on, so still kept going to work on the market. And the picture of him pushing a barrow, which I've just seen for the first time in colour while I've been doing this book, because a guy called Russell Holden has colorized some photographs, another guy called Pete Roach did some, but I'd never seen it, and I thought the colours would be completely different than they are, but that was an actual photograph taken on the day with Tommy actually working on the barrow.
Yeah.